Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Another busy week. Well, let's review the bidding first on Ronna McDaniel. She, of course, is gone now, as she should have been. But the real, I think, question that is still remaining is, what lesson does the mainstream media learn from this? Obviously, you shouldn't hire people who have been spokesmen for the big lie. We get that, and I think NBC gets that. But the larger question is, what do they think their mission is? Is their mission simply to provide balance? Is it simply to provide something so that they might attract a few voters who generally watch Fox News? By the way, I think that's a silly strategy because there probably aren't very many of those. Or do they take from this a much deeper lesson, which is that the purpose of what they do is truth-finding. And it doesn't mean they have to put on people who have alternate views if those alternate views are lies. It doesn't mean that they have to dredge up someone who has views that are antithetical to democracy, to a free press. Remember, Ronna McDaniel was someone who called them the enemy of the people. So I think, once again, we're back to a central dilemma that the media has never really solved, and that is, how do you cover Donald Trump and the Republican Party in this time? They are not a normal party. He's not a normal candidate. You can't simply say that this is a policy debate. You can't simply say this is one party's view, this is another party's view. When one party is deliberately undermining democracy, is deliberately lying on a consistent basis, you have to lay it out. You have to tell people that these two things are not the same. And if that sounds like it's taking sides, well, yes, it's taking sides in favor of the truth, in favor of democracy. So we will see whether this experience has chastened not only NBC, but seeps into the larger thinking of how the election is covered and how they cover, in particular, Donald Trump. Meanwhile, there were some legal developments as well. We are going to trial on April 15th, and Donald Trump is now under a gag order in New York City. And that order says he can't threaten or say things about the jury. He can't threaten the lower level people who work at the court and the prosecutor below Alvin Bragg. But he is free, the order said, to talk about the judge and to talk about Alvin Bragg on the theory that these are big boy politicians and officials. They should be able to take public criticism. Well, what did Donald Trump do? He turned around and he smeared and attacked the judge's daughter. This is not in violation of the gag order, but of course it does undermine the judicial system. No individual should be subject to threats and to innuendo and to these sorts of outbursts. And we have seen a very interesting phenomenon, and that is federal judges around the country, including Judge Walton last night, are beginning to speak out and say they don't think that this should be tolerated. Even when you're talking about judges, even when you're talking about the chief prosecutor, the legal system is built on the notion that you can't bully your way into, you can't threaten your way into a exoneration. But Donald Trump doesn't play by these rules. He plays by his own rules. And I think it's incumbent upon judges to not just think of themselves, but think of the damage he is doing to the judicial system. Other Americans look around and said, if I said something like that, I would be in contempt of court. I would be in deep trouble. And they're probably right. So we will see as this trial progresses in New York. This, of course, is the falsification of business records case. Whether Trump pushes the envelope, whether he, in fact, violates the gag order. And hold on to your hat, because I think Trump is going to have a few more delays, including, perhaps, an attempt to fire a lawyer in order to gain more time. Now, in a criminal case, a judge actually has to give permission to a lawyer to get out of it, and he has lots of other lawyers. But Trump is going to pull every stunt in the book to try to delay and delay. Let's look at this in the bigger picture. Donald Trump is not so much running a legal defense. He's not trying to accomplish what most defendants who think they're innocent want to do, which is a quick trial that exonerates them. No, he's doing two things. One is he is using these trials and his trial appearances in lieu of a traditional campaign. I think he's too old, he's too tired, he's too crazy, he's too broke to conduct a real campaign. So he's relying on free media, and which he gets at each one of these performances. And they are performances. He goes to court, he grumbles, he comes out on the steps, he condemns the judge, he then tweets or whatever the Truth Social equivalent is about these cases. That's how he is running his campaign. And he's building a campaign on victimhood. He is a victim here. He's being singled out for prosecution. These are all the far left conspiring against him. So he is making himself into a martyr and using that as the basis for the campaign. But there's something far more damaging that is going on, and that is he is running for president to get a get-out-of-jail-free card. In other words, he's using the political system to undermine the rule of law. We've never had a president who wanted to get into office so he didn't have to go to jail, so he didn't have to face a jury. That's particularly noxious, and that is the essence of what the rule of law should prevent. We should not have people who use their office, quite literally, to stay out of criminal trouble. And in this case, the greatest miscarriage of justice that could possibly occur would be if the American people vote him into office and he uses then that as a mechanism to avoid responsibility for his behavior. So I think we shouldn't lose track of those two aspects as opposed to following the ins and outs of each individual trial. I would also keep an eye on Mar-a-Lago. This is where Judge Cannon, who is the queen of delay, the queen of ridiculous theories, who clearly has her thumb on the scale for Donald Trump. How much does Jack Smith put up with down there? Is he going to start making a motion, for example, to recuse her? Is he going to take up some of these cases to the 11th Circuit? And while he's there, strongly suggest that she's unfit and too biased to conduct this trial? If he doesn't, I don't think there's a ghost of a chance this case is going to come to trial. And worse, when it does come to trial, doesn't come to trial before the election. And worst of all, if it does come to trial, and when it does come to trial, by her rulings, she could very well create a situation where there's a mistrial, or even worse, that she essentially fixes the case in such a way that it's impossible to convict him. She gives jury instructions that are ridiculous, or she directs a verdict in his favor. So I think it's going to be essential in that case, if you want a respectful and an effective display of the rule of law, that you get rid of the judge who is not playing the game of impartial judicial arbitrator, but who is in essence a lackey for Donald Trump. So keep an eye on that. I also want to take a step back and talk a little bit about the Supreme Court. We've seen in a number of cases this year, and in their public behavior, in their ethics violations, that Justice Alito and Justice Thomas are really on their own planet. That is the planet of judicial imperialism. These people don't care about the appearance or the reality of a conflict of interest. Justice Thomas is sitting on a case, in a series of cases, about the insurrection, which his wife was involved in. Query whether any other judge would be allowed to do that. And what's worse, they continually go fishing for extreme theories and opportunities to advance a right-wing agenda. We plainly saw this in the case of the abortion pill. Rather than look to the main issue that every other judge had spotted, namely whether there is standing, that is, whether there's really an injury to this group of doctors who brought the case, they want to go exploring, that is, Justices Alito and Thomas, they want to go exploring the Comstock Act. What the heck is the Comstock Act? That is an old law from 1873, which basically prohibits sending through the mails medication or devices that can perform an abortion, and also has a ridiculous violation of the First Amendment, which essentially prevents you from sending smutty materials. And the definition is something as vague and as silly as that. This law has not been enforced for 100 years or so. It was never interpreted to ban sending through the mails abortion mechanisms, abortion devices that were legal in the state that they were being sent to. So what are these guys up to? These guys are coming up with a legal theory that they think might be able to extend the Dobbs opinion into a nationwide abortion ban. Who's asking them to do this? What reason do they have to bring this up in the case? Well, the reason they have to bring this up in this case, and the reason they are choosing to, is that this is what their right-wing patrons want. This is what they're looking for. New adventures in law, new theories to ban abortion. This is not the role of judges. But these people do not act like judges. And it's important to remember how far off the balance beam these people are. They go far beyond even what Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh would do. And those people are hardly a bunch of left-wing, progressives. They are simply conservative judges who have some modicum of appreciation for precedent and for the rule of law. So I think we've gotten to the point where Judge Alito and Judge Thomas are so far gone and so far beyond the realm of respectable and respected jurists that essentially anyone going in with a position they don't agree with is already going to have 2 strikes. They're going to lose those 2 votes. At the other end of the spectrum, I think it's interesting to see what becomes and what is becoming of Amy Coney Barrett. She is no progressive either. She joined with the majority in the horrendous Dobbs decision. But in small ways and in large ways, she's beginning to show her independence. She's not with Thomas and with Alito on this issue of the Comstock Act. She, even in a case involving the disqualification of Donald Trump, chided the majority for going too far, for saying that not only could states not decide the issue of disqualification, but that Congress needed to act. That was further protection, if you will, for insurrectionists. And she, like the liberal justices, said that went too far. So you see in small ways that she is inching towards some level of independence. That's something we should encourage and praise. It's not that she's going to vote with the 3 more progressive justices in a lot of cases, but the way she decides cases and perhaps her willingness to either concur or even dissent in some cases will help a little bit in restoring some balance, some sense of legitimacy to the court. It's also noteworthy that she's traveling around the country now with Justice Sotomayor, trying to convince us all that it's much more collegial in the court than you would think. Well, maybe she's more collegial. I don't think that's true of Justices Thomas and Alito. But again, it's a sign that she has some institutional concern for the court that 2 of her colleagues certainly do not. So let's finish on a happy note, which is the campaign that President Biden is running. He had a fundraiser in New York City on Thursday that raised $26 million. That's one night, $26 million. By far a record. I think it's more than Trump has raised in a month, more than the RNC has raised in multiple months. And I think it's indicative of the fact not only are the 2 former Democratic 2-term presidents still very popular, in particular President Obama, but that there's more enthusiasm, there's more interest in President Biden than you might think if you read the headlines. And in fact, if you believe in polls, remember, at this stage, I really don't. He certainly is improving in many of these national polls and state polls. So if that is something that gives you solace, go for it. But I think it's also seen in his attitude, in the energy with which he is campaigning, in his willingness to throw some punches at Donald Trump. He kidded at that fundraiser that he had once challenged Trump to play golf, and he would even give him 3 strokes if Trump agreed to carry his own bag. A not so nice slight at Trump's, shall we say, physique and physical capabilities. So he is fighting with a lot more fervor, enthusiasm, moxie, and Democrats like that. It's one of the reasons they're starting to feel a little bit better about this campaign. And they should, because objectively, look at what has been going on. The economy is very strong. We got some decent inflation numbers again today. We have had a resurgence of manufacturing. We've had a resurgence of good union jobs in infrastructure, made possible by the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We have repaired relations internationally. We have made really tremendous investments in green energy and addressing the climate issue. And of course, he has nominated almost now 200 judges who are not only diverse in their outlook and their background and their race, gender, ethnic background, but are also tremendously skilled and tremendously qualified. And of course, there's Ketanji Brown Jackson now on the Supreme Court. So in other words, President Biden's got a lot going for him. And I think over time, you're going to see some of those advantages, objective factors like the economy, as well as money, which he has a clear advantage over Donald Trump, who, by the way, is siphoning off money to pay his lawyers from the RNC. Good luck to the rest of the Republicans who are depending upon that money. President Biden, in other words, has some real advantages. And over time, I think those may increase, and perhaps increase exponentially if, in fact, Donald Trump goes to trial and could get convicted in the month of April or May. So keep the faith, keep on working for democracy, make sure you vote, make sure others around you vote, volunteer your time, your money if you are able, and remember, nothing less than democracy is on the line. So if you enjoyed this program and you enjoyed our other programs, please tell your friends. They can subscribe and click right there. They can follow on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever they get their podcasts. Bye-bye.